Welcome, everybody, to another edition of UFO Man Live. I am Tim, otherwise known as UFO Man, and to my side is my best friend and co host, Tommy Highway. Take it away, Tommy.
Hey, folks, I'm Tommy Highway. Want to thank everybody for coming out. We have a really jam-packed show full of just really interesting things that we're going to talk about tonight. It's funny how a lot of the things that were impossible and sounded crazy a few weeks ago have a lot more credibility now. Before we get started, though, I wanted to go ahead and remind everybody that on Tuesday the 1st, we're having one heck of a panel show here. We've got folks like Michael Mazzola, director Michael Mazzola, he'll be there. Terry Lovelace, one of our favorite guests, he'll be there. We've also got Ryan Stacy from our big friend from Canada with his own show. We're going to come together. We're going to discuss a lot of things and see if we can get to the bottom of what the government's about to drop here, or if we're going to get something good, or if we're going to get the same runaround or whatever. But before we get into all of that, I saw something a few days ago, and I was just scanning YouTube. I was watching, and I'm not going to mention what program, but I was watching a program that had a couple of anchors on it, and they were talking about the disclosure of the report, things like that. And these people are really into this. I guess I'll go ahead and say it. It's on the Hill, okay? And this young fella that's on there, I don't recall his name, but he's really into this subject. I mean, no matter how you feel about his politics, the guy is kind of spot on when it comes to ufology and what's been going on lately. But they had a skeptic on there. And again, this is just a couple of days ago, and it's a typical skeptic. I mean, no matter what kind of evidence you show this person, all right, they're never going to believe it. I mean, a flying saucer,
Right.
UFO could crash into their family's pool, and they still wouldn't believe it.
Right.
The example that I want to give you is that he's been talking for weeks. This particular skeptic had been talking for weeks about the triangle incident, the Jeremy Corbell video that was released. Depicting those green triangles that were harassing U.S. ships. Now, this man was trying to come off and say, listen, I've been in photography forever. I know all about digital photography. These are nothing but lens flares. This happens all the time, things of that nature. Well, now, if they're lens flares, I wonder how in the heck that we're getting a radar track on a lens flare, especially when we're talking about 50 to 100 of those.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm sorry, folks, but if your digital camera is doing something to show up on military radar, probably ought to get rid of that camera. Okay, there's something seriously wrong. What it is, it's just another one of these skeptics that, again, no matter what you tell these folks, it doesn't matter what you show them, they're never gonna believe it. Period. Tim, what are your thoughts on that?
I agree entirely. I've talked to people till I'm blue in the face in regards to UFOs and their validity now. And they're like, nah, that's just a hoax. So, yeah, I do agree.
Yeah. And the thing about it is the UFO subject at this point is starting to come out of the shadows in a real big way. In fact, I wouldn't say starting to come out. It's out. All right. Now, in times past, when you had an experience, when you wanted to share your UFO experience, people would look at you, certain people would look at you like you were either lying or crazy. This has happened to me, okay? But now that the government has actually come out and admitted, okay, and verified that these objects that they're capturing above our military aircraft, above our military facilities, they are actual, real, tangible objects. There's something really there. Now, they're stopping short of calling it alien spacecraft. But at least at this point, we've gotten to where the government is able to, or is actually comfortable enough to come out, and I guess begrudgingly enough to come out and admit that, listen, there's something going on here. We don't know what it is.
They've also come out and actually said that the vehicles that are being displayed in the sky above the USS Russell and the USS Omaha and 7 other warships were actually vehicles that had to be at least 100 to 1,000 years ahead of us. Mm-hmm. And if a foreign technology has leapfrogged us, it wouldn't be that far.
That's correct. And Tim and I were talking about this backstage. Let's assume for a moment that this is one of, let's say it's one of the American black projects that we've all heard about. Let's assume that's true for a moment. Well, I can tell you that with the level of technology and the expense, the amount of money that would have to go in to creating vehicles of this nature, you're lucky if you're going to have 1 or 2 of them. You're not going to have a fleet of them because nobody on this planet could afford that level of technology. There's just too much money involved in that. So that's why it starts, to me, the triangles and other incidents where we've had multiple vehicles harassing our ships. I don't think we're talking about a foreign adversary. And there is one question I would like to ask, and this is something I'm going to ask on the panel Tuesday night, but let me go ahead and sneak preview this question for you folks, because I think you're going to like it. Now, imagine this. If we know that these objects are not ours, they're not something in the United States military arsenal and or inventory, okay?
Right.
And we are 99.999% certain that it's not an adversary's project, okay? So we've taken two things off the table right there. So that being said, what is there to classify at this point? I mean, why are we classifying anything? The only reason to classify anything at that point is simply to suppress the information.
Suppress the information and perhaps maintain control, because when the government can hold something over our heads, they can control us to a certain extent. Some of us are awake and they can't control us, but some of us are not. And those of us that are not are being controlled. And I do know that a lot of the disclosure is hanging on the petroleum-based economy, because if they were to release information pertaining to alien life, scientists are going to come out and ask, okay, Tommy, where did these ships come from? How did they get here? What type of propulsion did they use? And when they have to answer those questions due to a congressional order, like what we have with the 180-day report, they're going to say something like, well, they're using zero-point energy. Well, how do you know they're using zero-point energy? And then they're going to discover that we've had zero-point energy technology for decades.
Sure.
And then that'll come out, and that'll make the oil industry worthless.
That's right. You also have the question of alien abduction. That's going to come up. Is this really happening? And that's going to start panicking certain people. It comes down to the point where, are we ready for this information? And right. I'm not going to say whether or not I believe that. I mean, I think most of you know, but whether or not we're ready for it or not, it's here, folks. We are on a brand new dawn when it comes to this subject, when it comes to the subject of UFOs, UAPs, ufology, and all of that, which is going to lead to a science revelation and the whole nine yards. It'll be very interesting to see what the government actually drops at this point, because in my opinion, they're going to have to show us something that we've never seen before. Because if they don't, they're going to look like a bunch of bagmen, just with nothing, and they're going to look like they're hiding it. Bottom line.
Right. Their plausible deniability kind of flew out the window already, so there's nothing you can do. But I think another reason they might not be coming out with the information is, what if they are ET craft, but they're aggressive? They have an aggressive agenda. If they tell the public, and they know the public and how they're going to react to an aggressive threat from outer space, considering if you consider what happened in that radio show back in 1939, War of the Worlds, how everybody reacted on the East Coast. If we were to react the same way today with an aggressive alien threat, if it was an aggressive alien threat, they wouldn't want the public to know that. They're trying to protect it because they don't want to sound inept, because they want you to think that they control the sky over the United States. They control the sky wherever they fly. And if they admit to the fact that UFOs are outdistancing them, outpacing them, outmaneuvering them, and have technology far exceeding them, and they're aggressive, then, it's all up in the air from there. What do you think, Tommy?
Well, I think that, and I've heard this theory a million times, and it's probably pretty true. If they're hostile, they're doing a pretty bad job about it. Because I'll tell you, if they have this equipment, these craft, and even the ability to get here at that point, they really shouldn't have a problem wiping us out, if that's what they wanted to do. So I think that we're part of something that they need. I think that, like you look at abductions, a lot of times it's generational. You're talking about genetic material being extracted. You're talking about fetuses of pregnant women all of a sudden just completely disappearing from the body, things of that nature. So, again, are they hostile? It depends on, I guess, how you look at it. But right now, I think they need something from us.
I think they do. Some of them need something from us. I think that there is a duality in space as well as on Earth. So, in my opinion, if there's a duality, there's good and evil races out there. And some who we would consider evil are probably just indifferent and so far advanced that they're indifferent. And they're coming here for their scientific research or their anthropology or their family vacation. Who knows? but all I know is if they have an agenda that would be detrimental to the not just the American public but the world, that could be a good reason why they're not coming out completely and giving us true transparency.
Well, one thing is for sure. I mean, they've come out at this point. They've admitted that these things are, in fact, many of these things are, in fact, real. They're real objects out there. I mean, they're showing up on radar and all of that. And the United States government, you have to look at it, and I'm saying this as a former government employee, the United States government loves control. They're the master of the planet. They know they're the master of the planet, and they like that role. Okay. Right. So when something comes along like this, that shows them that, in fact, we are not the masters of the planet. Okay. There's somebody out there with technology that's a whole lot better than ours. I mean, it's not even close. I mean,
right. Exactly.
You're not taking, let's say, a jet aircraft from 50 years ago and comparing it to one in 2021. It's not what we're doing here. We're taking a 2021 jet aircraft, the best we have, and it's trying to compare it to something that's such higher performance that there is no comparison. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Right. Linda Cloud in the chat said, if they were going to wipe us out, they would have. Well, then again, there is a technique known as taking your time to scout out the area. And they could just be scouting out the area, and considering that they can live longer than we can, and their lifespans are significantly longer, they could be taking their time to scout out the area. And while they're scouting out the area, they're also looking at our technologies. I mean, if you look at them flying over nuclear missile sites and disabling and enabling nuclear missile sites, or flying over nuclear subs or flying over nuclear ships, anything to do with nuclear power, they've been around, even nuclear power plants. So what I'm saying to you is maybe they're checking out our infrastructure. Maybe they're checking out our military. This would be a ploy that they could do over decades, if not longer, because of their lifespan. And if they do it slow enough, then we won't suspect as a world that there is anything wrong, because we all think, well, they have the technology to destroy us. Why haven't they done so already? So obviously they're benign, but that may not be the case.
Very good point. I think it's very interesting. There was a story, and I want to say it was in Nepal is where this thing was found, but there was a flying saucer that was actually found, a UFO was actually found buried inside of a mountain. Okay. And here's the thing, this thing was maybe it maybe been there for 100 million years. It had been there so long that the mountain actually grew around this craft. Okay.
Right.
I think it was a platinum mine or something. They were trying to do like a strip mine for platinum or some precious metal, and they discovered this thing buried. All right. Now the thing is in incredibly poor condition, but they were actually able to get inside of this vehicle. And when they looked around, they saw cages with tiny dinosaur bones in them. All right. So this thing could have been sitting there for at least 65 million years. Right. So
right.
You go back and you look at the wood carvings, you look at the stone carvings, you look at the artwork on cave walls, even artwork during the Renaissance period. I mean, our ancestors are trying to tell us that, hey, we were seeing this stuff, you know, they were trying to almost in a way sort of alert or warn us that, hey, this is going on. At least in my opinion. I mean, like Tim and I were talking about before the show,
right?
If you're like an Aztec, okay, you're back in those days, Here's your day. You're about that far away from starvation at every single day of minute of your life. Okay. So since you're that far away from starvation, food is your number one priority. You don't have much of an imagination. So you depict something on the walls of a cave or a carving or whatever. What you're doing there is you're showing the future what you saw, what you witnessed, because it's not like you have an imagination.
Right, exactly. Your first idea is food. It's not your instinctive ability to go out and draw a spaceship on a cave wall. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's exactly the truth.
Yep. Well, Tim, you want to go ahead and should we go ahead and go for it all and roll the video clip for the week?
Sure. Okay, we're going to roll our UFO video review for 5/29/2021. Here we go.
How it's going away now? Sarah, look at Wait, that's weird.
Yeah, we're tripping on that too. It's a planet.
That's weird.
Right.
No, look.
No, that's weird, guys.
Yeah, I have to look at that.
No, that's genuinely weird.
That's weird.
Now, when I enlarged it, you can see different colors, and it is moving, and it does go down into the tree.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's definitely not Venus. You can write all that stuff off. You're not looking at ball lightning because it's just stationary. They're fairly stationary. I mean, that's no noise.
Yeah, I took the audio off of that.
That's weird.
Right.
You're not hearing rotor wash from like a helicopter.
No, that's genuinely weird.
That's weird.
Okay, these are still shots.
Multiple colors and not running lights.
Right.
I captured on our low light camera represents something I've never seen before. A craft emerging from the ocean and taking flight.
Outstanding.
Euler Greg says hi, Tommy.
Howdy, sir.
I captured on our low light camera represents something I've never seen before. A craft emerging from the ocean and taking flight.
See, you're obviously not talking about some sort of a sub-base missile or whatever. There's no tail on that. You know, there's no gases being expended that we can tell. That's just a straight white light emerging from a body of water and headed straight up. Now, folks, I ask you, what in nature does that? I mean, what creature, what phenomenon in nature makes something like that happen?
I have to say, somebody left a funny comment on that video the other day. They said it was Mick West stated it was a flying fish that was on fire.
Yeah, there we go.
I thought that was funny, and that shows the credibility of Mick West. Okay, here we go. And just watch this light.
Ну как ветер дует оттуда вот, с запада. Почему он не приближается к нам? Почему он остановился и там висит?
You'll see it in a minute. It's hard to see when
Это или
it's against the
шаровая
blue
молния,
sky.
или НЛО.
It's going around every
А
power
может просто
line.
воткнуть шарик, который летает против ветра. Но такого быть не может.
Paul Roberts, I'm going to agree with you on that statement, sir. I agree with you.
Шаровая молния или НЛО.
Way too fast to be a
Может
drone.
просто воткнуть шарик, который летает против ветра. Но такого быть не может.
Way too erratic.
Yeah.
And that's what it looks like right there.
Clearly excited swamp gas.
Yep, reflection off the butt of a goose.
There you go.
Cavolo, ogni volta che
That's a good one.
compare questo oggetto. Ah, che è un nuovo UFO.
Tic Tac.
Ma che
Nope, wait till
diavolo
you see
è?
it closer. It's too short, I think. It looks like an orb.
Come l'altra volta. C'era la nebbia. È comparso di nuovo sto
Or
coso.
a sphere.
Ma che cavolo sei? Cosa diavolo sei?
Jams, it's not fake.
Peccato che lo zoom non può andare più dai 6x. Sei tornato. Come l'altra volta. C'era la nebbia. È comparso di nuovo sto coso. Ma che cavolo sei? Cosa diavolo sei?
Yeah.
Peccato che lo
Soldama
zoom non può
13.
andare più dai
You're
6x.
right. I think it's like a spherical
Sei
UFO.
tornato.
It's just hanging there. It's not doing anything but just taking up space. That's
And
amazing.
there are lights flashing on it. If you
Yeah,
look, you'll
up top.
see a light on top and one
Yeah.
on the side. There it is. Okay, this next one doesn't have any sound or frame of reference. This is over the Netherlands.
I'd like to have context of what that area looks like in the daytime, but that is definitely
Right.
unusual.
Same here. You know, I thought at first when I saw it, it might be something like a drone with a bunch of multicolored lights on it. But the way the lights are flashing, they're not programmed. They're so erratic and out of sync. Here are UFOs over Bend, Oregon, 12/4/2020. Whatever that is, it almost looks to me like it's one vehicle.
Yeah,
with a,
I think so.
with a bunch of lights.
I think so too.
And some of the lights go off. Now I will replay the footage so you can take a look at it again. Zofa, yeah, it could be probes, but it looks like a larger vehicle. Backwoods Buster says Santa Claus. Well, according to NASA standards, yeah, it could be Santa Claus. And my camera's acting up again.
Well, I can tell you that, I mean, I think you're right. I think we're looking at one large object. And part of it's kind of lit up there on the bottom.
Right. I'll have a close-up here in a second.
Greg, I would tend to agree with that. I think that, and to Paul's point in the chat there, I hope they do give us something that we haven't seen before. I mean, I think that after all this hype, all the money spent, and everything else, I think they're just going to have to show us something. Hopefully, we're going to see data from the submarines and the things that they've actually incurred underwater, things of that nature. But who knows? Then again, we could get the same crap we always get, just a big file full of redacted words, and that's all. I mean, who knows? But let's hope for the best. Keep our fingers crossed on this one.
Right. This one was filmed by our friend Stephen Barone.
Fast. These are what I was telling you about. Look at
Now
that
this
going
segment
straight
is
up,
10
and then they're
times
gonna arch
faster
to
than the
left.
normal speed, but
I'm
I will
running
show
this 10
you
times actual speed
the
because
original
this isn't
speed
really
in
the
a
part
second.
that I want to show you. But this was while I was following what I knew to be at least 3 objects across the valley from the Las Vegas mountains to the Spring Mountains, and now it appears that these things are coming down. And I'm going to watch the whole thing fast to begin with. So there you go. There goes 3 of them. And here's where I learned to keep the camera on, because you don't know when other things are going to happen. So that is that. That's just showing you the whole thing at 10 times. So now I just slowed it down. I cut out the part where they're traveling over here, and now I'm running this at actual speed, showing the objects coming down behind La Madre Mountain, which is part of the Spring Mountains. And this is the mountain where, when I look at it right here, I know that this mountain is only like 3 miles from my home. This is how I was able to locate where they came down. And when I drew a line through this spot where they're coming down, it went straight through the charcoal kilns over on the other side of the mountain there. It's actually in a place called Wheeler Pass. So anyway, this is going to be the 3rd object that goes down, and you can see when it is running at actual speed, it was a smart idea to keep that thing running. So if any of you do this and you're getting started, yeah, just let your camera run a little bit longer, because you might miss something if you turn it off too fast.
And just to point out,
here comes the final 2.
we actually know who shot this. We know this person. Okay.
Yeah.
This guy is as legit as it gets. He is at the real deal. He's amazing. And I mean, when you see something come from this guy, you know it's the real deal.
We've also interviewed him on our channel, so you can go back and watch the live stream.
Great guy, super guy.
Yes, and we're going to have him on again in the future.
Yeah, that they come down. If you listen to the Millennial series that Charles Hall did, he talks about the charcoal kilns, and that the scout crafts for the tall whites would actually go park there at times because it was relatively flat. And I guess it could be used for the little tall white kids to go out and play or do whatever. But whatever it was isolated. And so they probably felt pretty safe being there. I, for one, believe the man, because everything I see and everything I shoot video of in these areas matches up perfectly with his testimony. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. It's amazing.
Check this out, Tommy. I got to say something about this. I'm going to stop it for a second. There's a reflection to the right of someone in the window.
Mm-hmm.
There's a light here. The light is moving independently of the reflection. As you watch the reflection move, the light is steadily moving in the same speed at the same trajectory, but it's different from the actual reflections. You can tell they're separate items in the frame. So take a look at this. See how the reflection's moving independently? It is. This was filmed over New York State.
Yeah, turnips pickled. I'm sort of questioning that myself on that one. I have looked at that. I mean, it looks like there's something there, but I do think that there is a chance that that could be some sort of a reflection, but it's hard to say.
The witnesses say no. They say they were looking down, and this is what they filmed down below the window. They say it's natural light. I have to go with the witness comment because that's all I have.
Mm-hmm.
But I do notice that the reflection of the person that's filming it, you can see it in the window, and that's actually moving independently of the light itself. So that means there's two different sources, but that light is moving. And according to the witnesses, it was moving in the direction of the plane, so it was actually moving at the same speed as the plane. So if the plane's going 500, 600 miles an hour, that object had to be moving at the same clip. So, yeah, it's not the sun, Zopa. This was below the plane. So, nope, sorry about that. Anyways, that's the end of our UFO video review for 5/29/2021. So, Tommy, how about the story about Japan Airlines Flight 1628 with Captain Tarachi?
Yeah, let's talk about that, because this is one of those situations where Captain Tarachi, it affected his career in a very negative way. The story goes, he was a cargo pilot, and he had a crew of people, of course, on board the cargo flight. I think it's the 747. They were flying above Alaska when they encountered something that was so strange that they started telling the air traffic control about it immediately. They started looking at these things. They started shooting every radar in the world, because you have to understand, height of the Cold World, we had an eye on everything, and everything was Russian as far as we knew. This was such a big deal, though, this sighting, that they actually woke Reagan up, who was the president at the time. And when they wake up the president, it's always for something serious. And they woke him up to brief him about it, because they knew he'd be interested as a UFO person himself. Right. So we've got a little video here, folks. We're going to run on this, and then we'll go ahead and we'll talk about this afterwards. But I tell you, this poor guy, he didn't lose his job per se, but they put him in a desk for the rest of his career. His family was shamed over this. I mean, it was like a real big deal. And all these horrible things happened to this man. And come to find out, now that in the last couple of weeks, now that the veil has been lifted, now that the stigma is beginning to dissipate for pilots, now they're coming forward with a lot more of their stories and sightings and things of that nature. Let's go ahead and roll that too.
I don't have a video on this subject, Tommy, but
sorry.
I do have some overlays.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Here's a drawing that he made a month after the sighting, indicating in the middle of this drawing, you'll see that there is a small plane on the right showing the jumbo jet in relationship to the vehicle. According to this, it was 1.5 to 2 times larger than an aircraft carrier in length. That doesn't account for the width or the height.
It also had some smaller ones with it.
Yes, it had some smaller ones with it, and I will show that. Now, here is more of an idea of what it looked like with the plane in relationship to the actual craft, which happened to be a burnished bronze color. Now, here's a picture of Captain Tarachi on the right and an artist's rendition, the best I've seen, of the large craft coming up alongside the cargo plane and the 2 discs in front. Now, according to what I understand, the 2 discs approached the plane first on either side of the plane in front of it and took up position. And then this large craft came up alongside and then dropped down and went underneath the plane. But it
Well,
really changed this man's life, didn't it, Tommy?
it really did. I mean, it really, in a very detrimental way. And you have to understand that, I mean, this guy and his crew, they were reporting to air traffic controller in real time. In fact, they were even instructed by ATC to change their course to see if this thing followed them. And sure enough, that's what they did. And it did follow them. Okay.
Right.
And again, they had radar all over this, the latest and greatest radar of the time, probably Surrey or something. And, this was, again, a real event. And this guy just happened to be the pilot that saw it. And by reporting and even talking about this, it kind of ruined his career, and that's so sad. That's so sad. And Tim brought up something backstage before the show. He said, now listen, now that all these people that used to come forward and got discredited by the government, lost their job, lost their career, all that, do they get any kind of compensation at this point for what they lost? And sadly, the answer is probably no.
Probably no. Yeah, you can't sue the U.S. government because if you try, you're going to lose.
Yeah.
They've got all the lawyers in their back pocket.
Mm-hmm. They own the game. You can't beat them because they own the game.
Right. Exactly. So to complement Tommy's commentary on the Japan Airlines Flight 1628, we came up with a pilot video compilation which shows both passenger jets and military jets encountering UFOs and or unknown objects, and some of them have the actual voice from the plane to the ground to the tower to NORAD, etc., and so forth. So here we go.
Credible witnesses is represented by airline pilots who often observe unidentified flying objects of exceptional dimensions while traveling along the regular commercial routes.
Pilots make especially good UFO witnesses. They know what's normal in the sky and what isn't. They've seen all different kinds of airplanes routinely. When a pilot reports the UFO, there's a better than average chance that that's what it was.
February 28, 1996, Flight Air Shuttle 5959, traveling from Detroit to Cleveland, observes a strange object of pulsating light that seems to be floating on the clouds right below.
Cleveland is 5959. We see traffic out there at a lower altitude. Do you have one there? Air Shuttle 5959, that's a negative, sir. I don't have anything out in front of you. Can you get an estimate on an altitude on it? Here, I'm going to estimate 2,000 feet below us, maybe, and so pulsating right about, 10 miles down.
The exchange is heard by a second plane, Mesaba 3179, who joins in the conversation.
That northwest of Detroit, did you see that light? Yeah. That's what I saw, a real bright white light, sometimes flickering underneath the cloud. Air Shuttle 5959, is that traffic that you saw earlier? Do you see him out there any longer? And that's permanent. It looks like a rotating light around it, like a frisbee type thing that's going around it. Mesaba 3179, would you think it might be like a reflection, maybe perhaps off a beacon that for some reason it's just one of those weird things, natural phenomenon? Because I got nothing out there. There's definitely a distinct whitish, it's looking a little red and greenish light sort of pulsating, and it is constant. It's not a beacon.
At this point, the pilot from the first plane decides to descend in altitude in order to observe the object with his own eyes.
Shuttle 5959. Just to keep you advised, we're descending to 4,000 feet right now, and as we descended through 10,000 feet, that object is above us right now. It is not on the ground. It's about 10,000 feet. I'll tell you what, that is weird. If you're sitting there pulsating.
November 18th, 1995. Flight Lufthansa 405 from New York to Frankfurt crosses an unidentified cylindrical object flying in the opposite direction and leaving a thick trail of green smoke behind.
I'll tell you, about 10 minutes, we passed it just 1 minute ago, and it was looking strange.
The same object is seen by the pilot of British Airways 226, which follows the Lufthansa flight a few miles behind.
Opposite traffic to the CFO. It took a very strong vapor trail. We took more of its smoke. The light on the front was very, very bright. And Lufthansa 405, how far off your side did that traffic pass? It was pretty close, and like the speedboat said, it looked like 2,000 or 3,000 feet above on the left wing. Just one looked like a UFO.
A similar incident was registered by flight Swissair 127 in August of the same year.
Swissair 127, go ahead. Yes, sir. I don't know what it was, but it jumped over to like a couple of hundred feet above us. I don't know if it was a rocket or whatever, but incredibly fast, opposite direction. It was too fast to be an airplane.
May 26, 1995. The crew from Flight America West 564, traveling from Florida to Nevada, observes a strange object with a series of flashing lights floating still in the skies of Texas.
There's nothing on the radars on the other spinners at all on that particular area, that object that's up in the air? It's up in the air? Affirmative. What's the altitude about? I don't know, probably right around 30,000 or so, and it's with a strobe, it starts from going counterclockwise, and the length is unbelievable.
Not seeing anything on their radars, FAA controllers contact NORAD, the American Air Defense System, which confirms to have no operations in progress in the area at that time.
I've got something unusual, and I was wondering if you all happen to know of anything going on out here. I had a couple of aircraft reported something 300 to 400 foot long, cylindrical in shape with a strobe.
Oh.
At 30,000 feet.
We don't have anything going on over that I know of.
This guy definitely saw it run all the way down the side of the airplane. It's right out of the X-Files. I mean, it's a definite UFO or something like that.
After a few minutes, NORAD calls back FAA and confirms the sighting on their radars.
Hey, we're tracking a search-only track kind of where that might have happened. We've been tracking it for about 3-4 minutes now.
In the meantime, the huge cigar-shaped object, over 300 feet long, has disappeared into thin air. What impresses airline pilots the most is usually the speed of these UFOs, which seems inconceivable for our technological needs.
They had just underneath our radar, picked up the cliff. He was moving about a mile a second. Just pull out straight ahead of us, disappear. Man, he was there and then he was gone.
Even though this kind of incidents is rather common, neither the FAA nor the military have ever acknowledged the existence of these unidentified flying objects.
What is this? Un punto. Ahí está. Está exactamente atrás de nosotros. Es correcto, ahora está a las 7 de nuestra posición con 10.5 millas. Lleva rumbo 283 y 334 de velocidad. Comandante, ¿qué es eso?
A ver, busquen eso que viene atrás de nosotros.
On March 5th, 2004, a Mexican military plane flying over the area of Campeche realized it was being followed by a group of unidentified flying objects.
Lo raro es que trae una punta delante.
¿Qué es eso? Dios mío. No podemos saber qué distancia. No tenían forma alguna de algunos que yo haya visto con anterioridad.
Ahí van más. Van más, siguen más atrás.
Abajo o arriba o arriba.
En medio, ahí van a ir 1, 2, 3, a la misma altura. 5.
O sea, que nos tienen rodeado.
Pues no sé.
Qué barbaridad,
Ahí se van a ver bien. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 en la pantalla. 9, 10, 11 contando toda la cola.
The most interesting thing is that the objects appear in the infrared camera of the plane, but were not visible to the naked eye.
Nunca pudimos identificarlo visualmente, a simple vista nunca.
Had the camera not been operating at that time, the crew would have never known they had company.
Bueno, dije, no es normal, no es normal. Pero el icono aparecía ahí, estaba en el radar y ahí estaba.
The sudden changes in speed indicated that these flying objects used a far more advanced technology than ours.
Las ciudades podían estar, no sé, de 60 nubes, incrementar a 120 o a 220 o 300 nubes. Cosa que pues jamás se había visto, ¿no?
Mexican authorities chose to make the video available to the public, even though they had no valid explanation for the event.
Okay, ignore my extra. It's not the end.
Have any targets up here?
Not a question pilots want to be asking, and for American Airlines Flight 2292, that was just the start of a 15-second communication overheard by radio interceptor Steve Douglas in his airwave capture cave.
When I heard this aircraft, basically above all other aircraft, because the tone in his voice was so excited.
The airline heading to Phoenix when the event happened over the northwest corner of New Mexico.
We just had something go right over the top of us that I hate to say this, looked like a long cylindrical object. It almost looked like a cruise missile type of thing moving really fast that went right over the top of us.
Talking to an ex-military pilot I know, he says that for them to see this object had to be coming at them practically head on. So whatever it was came fast and right at them and right over them, which gave them a big enough scare that they had to report it.
And now that the report is out there, the FAA jumps in.
They meet you at the plane, and then they have to discuss the whole thing and do paperwork, figure out what it was.
According to the audio from the cockpit, the object appears to resemble military firepower.
Looked like a long cylindrical object. It almost looked like a cruise missile type of thing.
But according to Douglas, who heard this happen real time, the skies were clear of military.
It's a Sunday. Basically, it's the military's day off.
Nor was there a military test notification.
When these tests occur, the military notifies the FAA. Aircraft are kept out of the area, and there are schedules and strict flight lanes that aircraft need to stay in to not interfere with these tests. That's not what happened yesterday.
Douglas says there's a list of possibilities the FAA must rule out to find the object's origin, such as branches of military or foreign countries, but
if the military can explain what it is, what's flying out there that we don't know about?
November 164 Mike Alpha, good afternoon, Kennedy, altimeter 2982. 2982, 161 Mike Alpha. Sierra Force 161 Mike Alpha, I haven't an object in front of me, I don't know what it is. You mean like a drone or something? Don't know if it's a drone, but it's bigger than a drone. All right, well, Mike Alpha, I don't show anything on radar. Looks like it's at your altitude? Affirmative. Do you need to turn or do anything? I need to make a slight left turn. That's fine, sir, and then I guess whenever you can, just let me know what you think it is. Will do. November 1 Mike Alpha, still not sure what it was? No, it's gone behind the clouds. I have no idea what it is. Definitely something was there. Okay, I mean, I'll have to assume that it was a drone. That's the only, I mean, I don't know if that's a safe assumption or not, but I guess that's what we'll go by. Actually, it looks like it had lights on it. That's really interesting. Again, still show nothing on radar, so I don't know what to say. Okay, and I'm not delusional. November 1 Mike Alpha, do you have a second? Yes, sir. One of the managers here would like, when you land, and no rush, but when you land, if you could call here, and they just want to, see if you can give them specifics, any further information. But someone would like you to call. Is that all right? I'll give you a phone number to call. This is the first time I'm getting a phone number that I'm not in trouble. Yeah, I just want to make that perfectly clear. You're not in trouble. So let me know when you're ready to copy. And ready to copy. It's area code 516-683-29. That's 516-683-29. That's correct. And when you call, they'll be expecting your phone call. They'll know you by your call sign. 161 Mike Alpha. Thank you.
Aqui na base aérea Santa Maria nós vamos ver o show.
Não achou?
Agora não, tá vindo, né?
Perde muito.
Okay, watch this.
Wow.
And it just doesn't fly by, it stops. Watch. Comes close to the plane, then it stops.
Yep.
See that? And that plane's moving.
I mean, it stops like it's checking him out, and then it takes off again. That's amazing.
Yeah. Right here, watch.
Another one.
Comes really close to him.
Yeah.
Goes right behind the nose cone.
It changed its course too.
Yep.
Outstanding.
I was gonna say shooting star. Shooting star, but then it stopped, huh? Yeah, let me zoom in, man. It's like an orb, man. Look at that shit. It's pulsating. Oh, this is awesome. And he's not on TCAS, man. Huh. Well, I can tell Rita now. That's interesting. That is, dude. That is shit hot. Platillos, platillos. He's a pulsating orb. Look at that, dude. Look at that. Turn on the tail light. Oh, it is on. Okay, cool. Never mind. Oh man, look at that thing, dude. Flip the TCAS switch up and see if you see anything on the display on the ND. Anything? Any TCAS returns? No. Okay, flip the switch down. He's definitely above our altitude. Yeah, that man. This guy is not reporting TCAS. That is a unidentified flying object, bro. He's almost like he's over the weather or something. Yeah, no. Oh yeah, we're gonna lose him in the clouds. Son of a bitch. Well, there it is, right there, man. On my ND, there's our airplane, and there's no TCAS. There's weather about 40 miles off our left wingtip, where this thing seems to have disappeared.
Yeah, I went both directions.
Yeah, there's no TCAS returns, man. It's not an airplane. It didn't have strobes or beacon or nothing. It's my first time. I'm so excited. I could say, yeah, I've seen a UFO. I got a video.
I'm always.
Woo! I'll do a 30-second one, all right?
Yeah.
It's turning colors now. Are there any clouds over there? I didn't see any. See, look at the shape. See it? As I zoom in, you'll get like a little bit of a teardrop.
Yeah.
So I'll film a smaller one and I'll send you that. Another one was 4 minutes long. That was in and out. This one will be, I'll give you a minute and then I'll sit. Wow.
That's strong.
Yeah, man. Look at this. I'm going to zoom in some more. Hold on.
That's a good steady one. There's your good.
All right. There you go. We'll set it to you.
Not really.
Looks like he's going further away, man. Yeah, I'm zooming in and he's pulling away, dude. And he's turning colors too. He's pulling away. Yeah, that was weird.
This was kind of hard to see. You can see it after a while, but it drops down above the nose cone and then drops down below it. It's right here. Right there. Okay. So that's our compilation of military jets and passenger jet UFO encounters. We hope you really enjoyed it. We're moving on to another segment.
Well, actually, let's talk about this one real quick. I guess our point here, folks, is that we think, Tim and I are under the impression of the belief, I should say, that we're going to start seeing a lot more footage, okay, especially from pilots, because now that stigma has been lifted, at least for the most part. And again, like we've always said, everybody's got a super camera in their pocket these days. I have a feeling that we're going to start seeing a lot more unique things in the sky, things that were always there, that were just too taboo for pilots to touch as a subject. What are your thoughts on that, Tim?
Oh, yeah, definitely. We're not just going to see the typical shapes of UFOs that we're accustomed to. We're going to start seeing all kinds of things. And with interdimensional possibilities of travel, perhaps we'll be seeing more transparent vehicles as well. What do you think, Tommy?
Absolutely. I think that we, and like Tim and I were talking about backstage before the show, this is such an interesting time to be involved in ufology. I mean, it's the perfect time in history. I mean, it's never been where the subject has come this close to the mainstream and people are actually being accepting of it. I mean, that's just, I think that we're going to see some pretty neat stuff moving forward, folks. And I have a feeling the next few years of our lives are going to be real interesting as a species. I mean, a species.
Right, and we're very lucky to be part of a UFO channel during this time because we can get a hold of the information and bring it to you and try to keep you informed as well.
And we don't look like crackpots anymore.
Except I'm turning red like Rudolph.
I'll tell you, folks, right up until a couple of weeks ago, when I meet people, okay, I'm single, when I meet women, that sort of thing, one of the things that they'd ask me, what do you do for fun? Well, I was almost kind of hesitant at times to be able to actually say that, well, I'm the co-host of a UFO channel. But in the last just 3 or 4 weeks, I got to tell you, I feel like a huge burden has been lifted off of me. And then I could say, listen, yeah, I am part of the UFO movement. I have had experiences and I'm not a crazy person, that's so important for your own well-being, really.
Right. Same here. But I've been out there for a few years now being called UFO man. That's almost as far as you can go. And I have to say that, there's a lot of stigma that's been lifted, a lot of ridicule. So now you feel more comfortable talking to people.
Absolutely.
Tommy, any last comments in that regard?
I don't think so. Just again, I mean, the pilots have been seeing this stuff for a very long time. There's rumored that the government, as far as like military footage and things, they have maybe thousands of sightings that they actually have video and high-speed camera footage of, radar tracks, and the whole 9 yards. I mean, could be thousands of them. And again, they've always been in such denial, just total denial about it, that they haven't shown us anything. So hopefully, folks, we'll actually be able to see something on this report that we've never seen before. And that's my hope. Right. I don't expect them to come out and say aliens are real. I'm not looking for that. But just show me something that I know is out there, and at least that'll be good enough, at least for me for now.
Well, at least verify that some of these vehicles are not made on Earth. At least confirm that at a government level. That's what I'm looking for.
Yep.
I'm not looking for them to say, oh, UFOs are real, they're structured vehicles, but we don't know what they are. I want them to come out and say, yes, we've known what they are for decades. And this is what they are, and this is where they come from. That's what I want to know.
Or at least tell us that, yeah, we've been aware of their existence for decades. That way, you know, we're all not a bunch of fools. And see, you have to understand, folks, the UFO, ufology, the subject of UFOs, let's be honest here. Let's just get it right out here on the table. It is a subject that has drawn a lot of crackpots over the years. And you have to understand that Tim and I get sighting reports all the time, and we have to parse through this because we want to make sure they're coming from credible people. And a lot of times, frankly, they're not. Okay.
Right.
It just draws that kind of crowd. But I'll tell you, when you whittle it down to the 20% or so that are actually valid sightings, valid experiences from people that are normal, people that are professional people that are not, that don't have something to gain from it, that just changes everything. And those are the ones that we investigate, and those are the ones that I hope that the government are investigating.
One of the things I heard recently was I heard a government insider say it's easier for the government to discredit a civilian sighting because civilians aren't trained as the military is trained to observe. So it's easy to discredit someone who's a civilian, like you, myself and Tommy. Okay, sure. It's easy to discredit us.
Yeah.
But in regards to military, it's harder for the government to say, oh yes, this pilot is telling a lie, because they trained them to observe and know what they're looking at. Just like Luis Elizondo said a couple live streams ago, we had a clip on where he said, he showed cards and he said, these are different types of aircraft, and they have to be able to know what they are at a 20-mile distance at a moment's notice. So if that's the case, they know what they're looking at. And yes, they're seeing things that are unexplainable. So, all righty, we're going into another segment tonight. It's in regards to alien abduction. Before we go into it, I'm going to announce this. The gentleman that we're talking about tonight is going to appear on our channel in July as a live guest. His name is Tom Reed. Tommy, do you want to take it away and talk about the Tom Reed family UFO encounter?
Absolutely. This is a wonderful story, folks. Let me go ahead and read this to you. 44 years ago, Thomas Reed and his brother Matthew were taken by extraterrestrials. Specifically, they were taken by the Greys. Thomas was only 6 years old, and his brother was the age of 4. It all started in the spring of 1966, when the boys, who shared a bedroom, started seeing orbs in their room. They described the orbs as they seemed like solid glass, but without the density. The balls were not luminous, but resembled a shiny hole in the air that you could not see through with a bluish outer ring around it. The orbs seemed to be controlled and moving slowly, but seemingly under direction. In other words, they had some deliberate motion to them. Right. One of them slowly broke away from the others and moved slowly, floating to the left of the window, then along the south wall of the room, just below the ceiling. Thomas intuitively felt that they were watching him and hoped that by closing his own eyes, they would disappear. They didn't immediately, but eventually left after about 10 minutes. Within a couple of days his first abduction took place. Thomas originally assumed them to be ghosts, which, out of a kid's mind, I could see that. There was a sensation he felt due to their illumination, sort of a white light. He remembers they were soon outside their home in a field along a tree line on the edge of his family's property. They came to a small clearing, an opening in the trees, and on their right side, they could see the craft and a being standing to the right of it. Thomas was now first in line ahead of his brother, and the Greys, who were about 6 to 10 feet behind. He would occasionally, this isn't written kind of very well. He would occasionally turn his head to confirm that Matthew was still there. In other words, he's looking for his brother. But when he was within 20 feet of the craft, he turned his head again, and Matthew was now gone. Thomas became fixated on the being standing to the right of the craft and said that he was in some way summoned to walk towards him. as a calm came over him. It was strange. The closer he got to the being, the calmer he felt. The being raised his arm and lightly placed his right hand at the center of his chest, touching some control embedded in his attire. Thomas doesn't remember walking into any UFO, so he was just in there all of a sudden. He stated that the grays can touch his embedded panel and that the abductee is then put into a different state of being. Thomas describes the gray's attire as almost being pewter in color and tight-fitting. He believes they were approximately 5 feet high, except for one who is between 6 and 7 feet tall, probably a tall white. He seemed to be in charge, so he was a tall white. He seemed to be in charge, the one that placed his hand on his own chest. Thomas describes the interior of the craft as having smooth, white hallways with no chairs. There were 5 crew members, including the tall gray who befriended him. This gray made him feel important. Thomas believed that he was interested in his biological makeup. He was being indoctrinated. So, once again, we have a situation where an abductee is describing genetic experiments being performed on him, and this is a kid. This is just a young kid, and he's telling you what happened to him here. So, again, if they have such awesome technology that's so much further ahead of us, and a lot of people have asked, well, why don't they just take us out or whatever? I think they need something from us. I think that whatever our evolutionary process is somehow tied to their evolutionary process, and I think that's why they're here playing with DNA. What are your thoughts, Tim?
I think some races are here to get DNA. I think other ones have other agendas, but we're still left wondering what those are. In regards to Tom Reed, he and his grandmother and his brother and his mom, so there were 4 of them, were driving along a highway, and this was broad daylight, and they saw an 8-foot or a 30-foot white sphere along a riverbank. And they stopped the car to look at it. And as the sphere flew away, they noticed there was an orange one just off a ways of the same size. And they were watching that. And when that flew up into the sky, they got back into their car and they drove down the highway a little bit. And then Thomas said that he felt like he was underwater. You know, when you're underwater and you hear a sound on the side of a swimming pool, like somebody tapping, it sounds like it's in the distance, but you feel a pressure at the same time. He said he felt that. His grandma felt that, his mom felt that, and his brother felt that. And when they looked out the front windshield, they saw a craft, a disc-shaped vehicle that was a burnished bronze color, which what I was telling Tommy earlier is very much like the one that was seen by Captain Tarachi in the 1986 JAL Flight 1628 event. So they were seeing this burnished disc, and it just hung there. And Tom said that all of a sudden there was a huge eruption of sound. All the cicadas and all the bugs and birds just started chirping again, and the disc was gone. During the time between when they saw it and felt the pressure and the disc leaving was a period of about an hour and a half. Some of the abduction experiences he and his family went through were found out through regression therapy. So I contacted him recently, and he actually agreed to an interview in July. So we're going to have him on, and he's going to tell us from the horse's mouth, so to speak, the truth of what happened to him, and you can hear it here live. Also, he's going to be featured on an episode of Unsolved Mysteries on Netflix in July, so look for that. The Tom Reed UFO Encounter. That's what it's called. Anyways, okay. All right, we're going to move on to our next segment, which happens to be UFO news that's out there leading up to the 180-day report that was supposed to happen on June 1st. So let's go to that. Okay, and Tommy was talking earlier about the Hill. I've got that gentleman right here. So let's bring him up and take a listen.
I was inspired to do this segment because I really do believe that this week is a turning point in the discussion of my very favorite topic. 60 Minutes produced a bombshell special on UFOs featuring interviews with Commander David Fravor, his wingman, many others who testified to extraordinary observations of unexplainable vehicles observed in flight. Now, the only downside I find in discussing UFOs is that there seems to be an intense animosity within the community amongst different personalities, amongst debunkers, and many more that detract from a very simple fact. I believe that Lou Elizondo, who was in charge of the DoD's program investigating UFOs, could have.
Imagine a technology that can do 600 to 700 G-forces, that can fly at 13,000 miles an hour, that can evade radar, and that can fly through air and water and possibly space. And oh, by the way, has no obvious signs of propulsion, no wings, no control surfaces, and yet still can defy the natural effects of Earth's gravity. That's precisely what we're seeing.
There's something that's been observed by both humans and by our technology, capable of flying in a manner unknown to human science. That's about as extraordinary as it gets. To me, the only question is, what is it? But increasingly, I have observed a backlash to what I'll call the mainstreaming of UFOs. Why now? Why is the Pentagon coming forward? Is this some sort of psyop? Isn't this all just a ploy to raise money for the Space Force? I understand that impulse, given that our government has already lied us into war on faulty intelligence. But it's important to really interrogate that assumption, because I believe right now, resistance to the idea of UFOs remains on mistrust of the institution, which is in possession of the wide body of evidence surrounding what could be one of the greatest mysteries of our civilization. First, I'll state that it is absolutely not impossible this is an all elaborate psyop for more military funding, but that I believe it's extraordinarily unlikely. Gideon Lewis Krauss of The New Yorker, he recently wrote this story titled How the Pentagon Started Taking UFOs Seriously. Now, we had him on the show, and I consider it to be the definitive first draft of history as to how exactly those within the five-sided building came to reckon with what was being seen as an by airmen of all time during the flight. Now, the history of Project Blue Book and early Pentagon attempts to cover up UFOs are well known. And if you don't know, I encourage you to go read about it. But the modern history of disclosure is very important to understand. It begins in 2007, when then Senator Harry Reid of Nevada had a discussion with Robert Bigelow of Skinwalker Ranch. Now, Reid, who has long been fascinated by UFOs and critically had just become the Senate Majority Leader, called up Senator Ted Stevens. Stevens, who was a senator from Alaska, shared a fascination of UFOs with Reid because he was a pilot in the Second World War and he had reported a UFO encounter. It stayed with him for the rest of his life. Now, Stevens and Reid corralled Hawaii Senator Daniel Inouye. Together, they placed a secret $22 million appropriation in a 2008 supplemental appropriations bill to investigate the phenomenon. The Pentagon pushed back hard. They didn't want any of this. Reid basically pulled rank and said, I'm the most powerful person in the Senate, so you're just going to do it. So from that point forward, the Advanced Aerospace Weapons System Applications Program, or ATIP, was born, which began studying Robert Bigelow's Skinwalker Ranch and all sorts of crazy stuff like goblins and dog-like creatures. But critically, it also hired Lou Elizondo, who you heard from earlier, in 2010. Now, Elizondo had no opinion on UFOs at the time. He was later promoted to the head of the program in 2010, which turned the program exclusively into the study of the national security implications of UAP, or unidentified aerial phenomena, encounters. It was there that Elizondo became familiar with the encounter he describes in the 60 Minutes clip, and many more, where he came to believe that UFOs are real, but was refused access to the Secretary of Defense repeatedly to brief him on the project and what he found in the Pentagon's files. From there, he was later introduced to Leslie Kean, a journalist who's been investigating UFOs for many years. by former defense official Christopher Mellon. Now, Elizondo briefed Keane on the program. He then resigned and then led to the now famous 2017 New York Times story, which sparked the UFO renaissance of today. Now, I took you through this torturous history for a reason, so you can understand the Pentagon had absolutely zero interest in letting any of this come out. They pushed back against Harry Reid. They tried to bury Lou Elizondo. They never wanted any of this. For it to be a psyop, the people in charge have to be in control. And by all accounts of the principal players involved, they did their damnedest to make sure all of this remained a secret from the public forever. Since then, what has happened instead is not disclosure, but resignation to overwhelming fascination from the public, from people like myself. Now, the Pentagon reassigned a high-level civilian to continue Elizondo's work, and since then, a sieve has opened up with awareness amongst the U.S. military that they will not be shunned for reporting to their superiors what they see out there. These incidents have been compiled within the Pentagon. They have been leaked to journalists, some of them, like Jeremy Corbell. And here's the critical part. All the Pentagon is doing is just saying, yeah, that's a real video. It's not that they're disclosing it officially. With over 1 million service members, of course things are going to leak. The speed up of information is because of a variety of factors, but it's almost certainly not because of a willful Pentagon effort to put more information out there. The modern history of UFOs, instead, is a much more hopeful story in which the truth was dragged out, and now that it's out there, they just simply don't know how to control the narrative anymore. As Luke Ross himself told us here on Rising, if the Pentagon wanted to raise money, there are a whole lot of easier ways in order to do so. Iraq, Afghanistan, terrorism, Russia, China. There's a lot of easier ways to get billions of dollars more in appropriations. Instead, this is a case of people who for a long time tried to deny reality, were then forced to reckon with it, and are now coming clean with us out of necessity. In other words, they're not manipulating us. We are manipulating them. And I did this column because, and I understand it, people are like, why now? Like, why now? Well, if you go and you see the modern history of what happened here, it was basically, this all only happened because Harry Reid was the most powerful person in the Senate, and he was just really interested in UFOs. And he's like, no, you guys are going to do it. And they pushed back so hard against him. You can read in some of the reporting. He's like, no, you're going to do it. And then he kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And once they had the information, then the SecDef, Mattis, he didn't want to hear it. Him and his staff, they're like, no. So they went to a journalist, and the moment the New York Times comes out, boom, now you have to talk about it. So it's critical that they're not the ones who are putting this out there. They're not the ones even necessarily who enjoy seeing videos get leaked. But when they do, now instead of lying, they're just like, yeah, it's real. They don't necessarily like that it's all there. It's just happening because of overwhelming public interest, not the other way around. And I think that's very important for understanding what's happening right now.
It is. And that bank shot, initiated by Harry Reid to then get this study done, that then release things publicly, is a really interesting way to kind of normalize, experiences that people have been having for years. Right. And now I think something very, very interesting is there's a lot of trust in military and in veterans, and they're now not afraid to come out publicly anymore to actually talk about these experiences. And I think that's a really important step in exploring what these phenomenon are and trying to figure out what this technology is.
I mean, one of those pilots in 60 Minutes that say, I saw these things every day. Every day. Think about that. But this is the thing that Commander Fravor and others talked about, which is that they didn't necessarily like that this was happening. They were like, I don't know if I should tell my boss, what should happen here? Many people, just because of the stigma, they just didn't want to say anything. Now, critically, this is why some of those videos from 2019 in the USS Omaha are so important. They're tracking it on radar. Everyone's fascinated. There's one guy is recording it on his cell phone because he can't. He's like, what the hell is going on here? Like, this is crazy. And you can see exactly then that they feel comfortable enough to be like, look, man, this happened. Here's the footage. Now, you can talk about the debunkers and all that stuff all you want. But the critical question is this. Is the government trying to play us on this? There's no evidence, in my opinion, to support that fact. If you look and discuss with every single principal player involved, the Pentagon got dragged kicking and screaming to disclosure, and now just has to admit the truth, which is, there's a lot of footage that we have which shows stuff like this. What is it? I have no idea. I have some theories, but I have no clue. And just admitting that is, I think, a very critical step. And I think it's important for people out there who are very suspicious to at least understand this history. This history will help you, I think.
Well, look, I tend to agree with you. I think the debunkers who are claiming this is a ploy to increase Pentagon funding probably haven't looked at Pentagon funding over the years. When's the last time their budget actually was cut and not increased?
I think that's the funny part, too.
They ask for things and get it.
Because you and I live here in DC and we know how to appropriate. I'm like, guys, they don't need to make shit up. All right. Like, they can do whatever they like. They can ask whatever they want and they're probably still going to get it. Anyway, another discussion for another time. Looking forward to what's on your radar next. That's next.
I want to ask you about a phenomenon known as...
the giggle gives away. I don't know what this question is. Let's see.
So I've already ruined it here. But this is quite a serious issue. There are these unrecognized objects in U.S. airspace that are also known as unidentified aerial phenomenon, I understand. And I wanted to see, there's a DNI report that I understand is going to be released soon. Can the Biden administration commit to releasing it in full?
Well, that would be for a decision by the Department of National Intelligence to make. As you noted, we're aware of the report requirement, and our team at the Office of the Director of National Intelligence is, of course, actively working on that report. And we take reports of incursions into our airspace by any aircraft, identified or unidentified, very seriously and investigate each one. But ODNI would be working on that report, and in terms of disclosure, that would be up to them.
I guess in all seriousness, though, can you characterize the president's concerns about this phenomenon? I mean, it is this concept of objects in U.S. airspace that are either origined from other nations or other entities. But what is the concern of the president that this phenomenon seems to occur and the national security apparatus?
Well, I think broadly speaking, the fact that we have a team that's actively working on a report, certainly the safety of our personnel, security of our operations, our airspace are of paramount concern, whether that is identified or unidentified aircraft. And we don't discuss that publicly for a range of reasons, but certainly the president supports the ODNI putting together a report and following through on that commitment.
Videos recorded by U.S. Navy personnel have added a new layer of evidence to the current national debate about UFOs. For the first time, radar images recorded inside a Navy ship have confirmed the presence of several unknown objects that swarmed around the ship for hours. I-Team reporter George Knapp here with a story that broke today on Mystery Wire.
Thanks, Brian. Over the past 3 years or so, the public has been able to see several astounding images of what certainly qualify as UFOs during encounters with the U.S. Navy. There's no question that the Pentagon has censored data to go along with the photos and videos, but none of that information has been leaked or otherwise released. That is, until today.
For 2 long hours on the night of July 15, 2019, the crew of the USS Omaha detected on multiple sensor systems unknown objects that surrounded the ship as it moved through ocean waters west of San Diego. One of the objects, a self-illuminated sphere at least 6 feet in diameter, flew alongside the Omaha for an extended period and was observed through a thermal sensor in the ship's combat center. Filmmaker Jeremy Corbell released the Navy video weeks ago and says similar events were reported by 8 other Navy ships in the same area over 3 days.
Mark bearing range. There was numerous warships that are having similar it appears to be coordinated interaction, and this whole series was within this kind of, I'd say, circumference of 100 miles, and there was up to 50 to 100 contacts.
In the last 3 years, the Pentagon has reluctantly confirmed the legitimacy of UFO images captured by Navy ships and air crews, including these photos taken off the coast of Virginia and the better-known videos, the so-called Tic Tac incident and the gimbal. But other than the images themselves, there's been no release of censored data to buttress these cases. There is now.
OD, if you can write a general lat long where we're at. And then the number of contacts you got, of course, the speed meters off.
Over a period of hours, crew members on the USS Omaha, which is located in the center of this radar screen, monitored the approach of the unknown objects, as many as 14 at one point, all around the ship. 2 different radar systems watched the objects and estimated their speed.
Track 781 just sped up to 46 knots, 50 knots, closing in. Oh, actually 38 knots.
That one's pretty much perfectly 000 relative, right?
Yeah.
Corbell obtained the images from sources he declines to identify. The Pentagon's UAP task force considers the Omaha spheres to be true unknowns. The ships that were under observation by the unknowns were unable to track where they came from or where they disappeared to. The Omaha sphere appears to have vanished into the ocean.
Oh, splashed.
At that point, it also vanished from all sensors. In one video snippet, 9 of the objects were seen around the Omaha, but 2 of them dropped off, somehow invisible to 2 radar systems.
And it supports the hypothesis that these are not just a balloon dropping into the water, or it's not something that is easily explained. These are true unidentifieds in mass number, and we'll talk more about that, but that's what we're showing people, where you have radar data that goes with FLIR data, what everybody has been belly aching for. So here you go.
If these are foreign-made high-tech drones, how do they fly with no wings, rotors, or detectable exhaust? Do they possess some sort of cloaking ability? The sensor data, combined with the video images, raises difficult questions.
These are unidentified. We don't know what they are. Everybody tries to corner me in saying they're aliens or something like this. I have no idea.
George Knapp, 8 News Now.
The video of the radar screens consists of 4 clips that were spliced together to show that this went on over a period of time. Today, less than 4 hours after that video was made public by us, a Pentagon spokesperson confirmed it is legit, that it was recorded by Navy personnel and is in the hands of the UAP task force. That's the unit created to prepare a report for Congress that is due next month.
I was inspired to do this segment because I really do believe.
What'd you think of that, Tommy?
Well, you know, it's the media is starting to wake up and smell the coffee here at this point. Again, this subject has been plagued with a lot of disinformation, a lot of crackpots. A lot of times the government has gone out of its way to discredit people that have reported these things. But now here we are. We've got the government that admitting that they're there. These are actual physical objects. The mainstream media is starting to pick up on it, and it's no longer a matter of laughing about it. It's no longer a matter of snickering. This is not some story told by a hillbilly at this point, okay? These are real, credible things. We've got footage. We've got radar tracks. I mean, what else do we need at this point other than the government to come clean and say, okay, well, this is what we know?
Yes, and that last video with George Knapp confirmed the fact that they were not lens flares.
Right.
So to all those people out there that are skeptical, that still believe in your lens flare theory, according to confirmation from George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell and others, it is not a lens flare. If you choose to believe that, that is your prerogative. But come along for the journey with the rest of us and open your mind to the reality of the possibility that these are alien craft.
Come on in for the big win, folks. Come on in for the big win on this one, because that's just it. There's evidence is not only mounting, it's beginning to pile up at this point. And again, like we talked earlier with the pilot thing, with the pilot segment, you know, these guys are now they're going to be a lot more forthcoming about the things that they're seeing in the sky. And I mean, pilots are going to see the most because they work in the sky. So it's going to be very interesting from here on out. We may not get full disclosure from the government, but I have a feeling that we're going to get a lot more evidence that we can use to piece together to come up with our own conclusions, folks.
Right. I think that the report that we're expecting on June 1st may not necessarily arrive as we thought it would. I received credible information from a credible source recently. One of the gentlemen that's going to be on my on our stream on Tuesday by the name of Ryan Stacy from the Experiencers Association, Support Association out of Canada, said he received information from a contact saying that the 180-day UFO report has been pushed back to the 25th of June. Now, if this is the case, maybe they're just in reference to documentation, because as Tommy and I both agree, and all of you in the chat, there is no way they can get by with not putting something out on the first, because if they do, they'll lose all credibility.
It's been written into law. That's the thing. I mean, it's been signed by President Trump, the whole 9 yards. They're going to have, I don't see how they can not give us at least a preliminary report on the first, give us something, maybe not the entire, enchilada, but give us a bite. Hopefully that's what they're going to do. Again, I don't see any, well, the government can break its own rules all the time. We've seen this happen on a daily basis. It's not like, they're going to arrest each other or whatever, but hopefully we'll get something, again, something that we can use, another piece of the puzzle that we can put together here, folks, and come up with some real conclusions from real people, about a real issue.
Right, exactly. From real people about a real issue, not something that you're going to hear from a drunken hillbilly, smoking or eating mushrooms, whatever.
Right.
Anyways, there are credible people out there, including Tommy and myself, who are trying to get the information out and push a grassroots movement to get our own disclosure if the government doesn't come clean.
Yep, we're pretty smart. We're pretty smart folks, and we can figure a lot of things out ourselves.
Yeah. So if you enjoy our show, please come back next Saturday. We would really like to see you. And also don't forget to come on Tuesday at 8:00 p.m. for our special 180-day UFO report roundtable discussion featuring director, filmmaker Michael Mazzola. He's the director of Stephen Greer's last 2 movies, Unacknowledged and Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. They're also working on a new movie called Cosmic Threat. And he may tell us a little bit about that when he's here. Also, Terry Lovelace, Esquire, he is a good friend of ours, and he's going to be a part of the Contact in the Desert UFO conference, along with myself. And he's going to be on the panel. And then we've got Ryan Stacy, like I said, from TESSA, the Experiencer Support Association out of Canada. Now, experiencer meaning alien abductees. So he is also a ufologist and an investigative journalist, and we're going to have him on. So please come and join the journey with us on Tuesday night, and we'll discuss whatever happens. If we get a report, we'll discuss that. If we don't get a report, we'll discuss why we didn't get it. So we are going to have a good time, and we hope to see you there. Please remember to visit our website at www.ufomannetwork.com, and also
share us out on social media, folks. That really helps us out a lot. If you could share our links with our material onto your Facebook and Twitter or whatever, we'd really appreciate that, folks, because it really helps. As you can tell, the channel is really growing. We're having a lot of real positive experiences with people. We're actually getting some very big names that want to talk to us at this point. Okay, and that's exactly what we need to do. Okay, that's where we need to go. We need to get the people that are in the know to come talk to us and come talk to all of you, and we'll sort this thing out.
Right. We'll get more larger names if we get more subs. So if you haven't already subscribed, please do so. And that will leverage us getting larger names, more popular names. Like, I can give you some ideas here: Eric Von Daniken, Avi Loeb, Linda Moulton Howe. She's in the works right now. We're working on that. Whitley Strieber, Luis Elizondo. In fact, I talked to Luis Elizondo yesterday in an email. So, we are communicating with some larger names, and we're trying to get them on the channel so we can present their viewpoint to you. So I want to thank everybody in the chat room for coming this evening, and I want to thank everyone who watched online. And I want to thank Tommy, my co-host, as usual, for being here and doing a wonderful job. And I want to say to everyone, good night.